and welcome to another session in the online 2021 Student Development Conference. I'm Mariette Harcombe, Chair of the Southern African Archaeological Student Council. With me today are my fellow council members, Kalita Shadrack and Mpumi Maringa. And with us today also is Seminew Asrat. And Mpumi is the host for today, so she is going to take it away and give us a full introduction to Seminew and his work. Take it away, Mpumi.
All right, thank you so much, Mariette. So, Mr. Seminew Asrat is an archaeologist from Ethiopia. He has a bachelor's degree in archaeology and heritage management from Addis Ababa University. He is the founding member of an Addis Ababa University Heritage Club, and he has a double MSc in archaeological material science from 3 joint European universities, namely University of Évora in Portugal, Aristotle University in Greece, and La Sapienza University in Italy. He is currently pursuing his 3rd master's qualification, focusing on prehistoric archaeology at Addis Ababa University. He has experience as an assistant museum curator at the Institute of Ethiopian Studies, so that is the IES, and he is currently employed at the National Museum of Ethiopia as a researcher concentrating on conservation of archaeological resources. All right, and today his presentation is on the paleoanthropological and archaeological potential of Ethiopia.
Okay. Thanks, Mpumi, for the introduction. My presentation focuses on the paleoanthropological and archaeological potentials of Ethiopia. It is a big topic. I'm gonna be presenting a synopsis, a short overview of a chronological overview of sites distributed in all corners of the country, starting from prehistory all the way to recent times. So my presentation starts from introduction, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the paleoanthropological sites and discoveries of Ethiopia, and then Ethiopian Paleolithic or Stone Age sites. And following this, I'm going to be discussing about the Neolithic Revolution, what the Neolithic Revolution looked like in Ethiopia. And I'm going to be talking about the Ethiopian Rock Art, state formation, and Aksumite civilization, megalithic sites, and medieval and Islamic Sultanate archaeological evidences in the country. So the main objective of this talk is to providing detailed but abbreviated information about the paleoanthropological and archaeological records of Ethiopia. As an introduction, Ethiopia is a country situated in Eastern Africa, which was recently coined as the land of origins. And most Ethiopians consider Ethiopia as a cradle of humankind. It is a country blessed with tremendous archaeological and paleontological resources. Ethiopia is a land of many contrasts. There are places which are really low, and the lowest point on Earth actually situated in Ethiopia Fair Depression, and the highest point about 4,620 meter above sea level. It is one of the few mountains in Africa, one of the few highest mountains in Africa. It is called the Ras Dashen. So the landscape varies from the barren desert to the lush green of the Ethiopian plateau. Ethiopia has rich history and diversity of climates and peoples and land features and ecosystems. And the heritage and archaeological records are the result of this diverse landscape. It is a home to diversified heritage spans millions of years since the prehistoric to the present times. So Ethiopia is a country where it all begins. So scholars believe that the earliest ancestor of our the earliest ancestor of a human being comes from Equatorial East Africa, the Great Rift System, the Great Rift Valley, considered by many as a paradise of geology and paleoanthropology and archaeology. This rift system extended from the north in Ethiopia all the way to Mozambique, Ethiopia, Kenya, and Tanzania. That's why most fossiliferous and artifact-rich sites are situated. In Ethiopia, there are lots and lots of hominid discoveries so far have been discovered. I'm gonna list some of those discoveries that are Ardipithecus kaidaba, dated 5.8 million years back. Ardipithecus ramides. This is one of the most famous hominid species. And Australopithecus anamensis, Australopithecus ethiopicus, 4 million years ago. Australopithecus afarensis, the famous Lucy, 3.2 to 3.8 million years ago. Australopithecus boise, Australopithecus garhi, Homo habilis, Homo erectus, Homo rudolfensis, and the oldest species of Homo sapiens, anatomically modern humans, came from Ethiopia. Up until recently, the oldest Homo sapiens believed to came from East Africa and a site in Afar Depression in Ethiopia. So is Ethiopia a cradle of humankind? I will leave the question for you. But there are many discoveries that are published in famous journals like Nature and Science. And there are researches that are going on in the country up recently. The scientists call the East African Rift System as a cake for, this is an ideal site for dating. This is where you get volcanic ashes that are a sequence of volcanic ashes and volcanic tuffs, which are critical for dating. Ethiopian Stone Age, Ethiopia has more than 2 million years of human renewal on Earth. Recently, there is a discovery in Kenya that dates the oldest lithic discovery that dates 3.3 million, the Lomoke culture. This technological complex is still disputed by many researchers, but up until then, the oldest stone tool came from in Ethiopia, and that dates back to 2.6 million years ago, the Oldawan Industry. The oldest tool came from the Gona paleoanthropological area in Ethiopia. And Oldawan Industry is characterized by a simple flake and core tool. It was believed to be utilized for chopping, and the flakes were also used. There are hominid species associated to this technocomplex, Australopithecus garhi, Homo habilis, and generally the Australopithecus, some scholars believe that Australopithecus species are believed to be utilized those industry. The Acheulean industry is also a more developed and sophisticated, relatively sophisticated technology compared to the Oldowan industry. And we have evidences of Acheulean sites in Ethiopia distributed specifically, especially in the Afar Rift system, sites like Melka Kundure, Midlosh, Ingona, Konso, and the broadly bifurcated rift zone of Ethiopia, southeastern Ethiopia, about 1.8 million years ago, and 1,000 years back. And this technique of actually came from also inside in Ethiopia. There are the main Ethiopian rift and southern Ethiopian rift in Ethio-Kenya border. Levallois Technology, MSA industry, we have also evidences of MSA technology, and this technology is characterized by a prepared core, predetermined core. And this is a little more sophisticated than the previous modis, the previous techno complex of Acheulean. There are sites, MSA sites are in Ethiopia, and the oldest site, one of the oldest sites in Ethiopia, is dated back to 270 to 300,000 years back. This techno-complex is associated with Homo sapiens. There are sites associated with this technology. Porky Peak in Ethiopia, and Porky Peak, Mochena Borago, Malkakunture again, and Gedamota is one of the oldest sites in the country. LSA and macrolithic technology. This technology is also characterized by macrolithic tools, miniaturization of lithic industries, and backed flakes, blood lattice, and geometrics. A variety of pose, retouch, and non-retouch flakes are also found in the LSA, or are used probably mounting on the hafters for hunting purpose. So mostly the backed pieces are moon-shaped and they are geometrics. This is a map that shows the distribution of LSA sites in the country. However, archaeological studies focused on the LSA of the country are very scant. Mostly the studies were focused on the early prehistory than the late prehistory. Following the LSA, the time period in Ethiopia was the Neolithic Revolution. About 90% of human history was entirely dependent on nature. When resources started to deplete, people started to develop a new lifestyle, the agricultural revolution. It was a time, the wide-scale transition from lifestyle of hunting, gathering to one of agriculture and settlement-based economy or society started in Ethiopia. This was a time where animal domestication started. So Ethiopia is one of the 7 plant domesticated centers in the world. So teff, coffee, incense, and sorghum were among few plant species that was domesticated in Ethiopia during this time period. Ethiopian Rock Art is another archaeological records that are distributed in different corners of the country. Rock artists could be paintings or pictographs, and they could be engravings. The rock artists in Ethiopia are Ethio-Saudi Arabian style, and they are mostly formed on the caves, rock shelters, and boulders. The rock artists dated between the 7th century to the recent time period. State formation. Regarding the state formation, we have evidences of state formation in Ethiopia about 10 BC to 10th century BC to the 5th century BC. There is one site known by a temple and inscription, and this site is called the Yeha site. The Yeha site in northern Ethiopia was believed to be a capital of the Damat kingdom. And this kingdom eventually developed a more sophisticated civilization in the country, the Aksumite civilization. The Aksumite civilization in northern Ethiopia flourished during the first 7th century AD. The Aksumite Empire, this empire was actually known as the Kingdom of Aksum, described by one of the Persian prophet Mani as one of the 4 greatest powers in the world during that time period. Persia, Rome, and China. So during the Aksumite civilization, there was a trade with the Roman kingdoms, with the Roman empires. And this civilization was known by erecting more elaborate monolithic steles in the country, especially in the northern Ethiopia. So this is a time period where from subsistence farming, there was a transition from subsistence farming to a complex literary civilization. There was written records. There was evidence of monuments, architectural buildings, and lots of pottery and ceramic traditions, trades with the Arabian world and with Europe. And this civilization was also known in Africa, the first to mint their own coins. And they are known by population contact with Arabia, Saudi Arabia, and Yemen. Actually, the rulers of Aksum went as far as Saudi Arabia to rule Yemeni and Saudi Arabia. And there are inscriptions, written evidences in Greece, in Greek language, in Ethiopian and Sabian languages. So this civilization started in the from the first millennium BC, the first century BC to the 7th to 8th century AD. Following the downfall of this civilization, actually the Aksumite civilization around the 8th century AD started to decline due to the rise of Islam in the northern horn. So the trade route was dominated by the Islamic traders, and the Aksumite civilization started to retreat southwards to the Zagwe or the Zagwe dynasty, emerged as a post-Aksumite civilization, Christian civilization. Actually, the Aksumite civilization was, during that civilization, Aksum was the first to accept Christianity and the first to accept Islam as a religion. By the 10th century, the Zagwe dynasty had emerged as a post-Aksumite Christian civilization, and this civilization is called Zagwe dynasty and devoted themselves to the construction of churches and monasteries. And actually, one of those churches are regarded as one of the 8 wonders of the world. The Church of Lalibela are monolithic. They are constructed out of a single outcrop churches. The idea was to recreate the holy city of Jerusalem in Ethiopia. The then king of Ethiopia was trying to recreate a new Jerusalem city in Ethiopia. And everything that is every archaeological record in that part of the country resembles more or less with Jerusalem. So still recently used by the Orthodox Christian churches, and it is an important pilgrimage center. The Ethiopian megalithics is an archaeological record. Mega means big and lithic means stone. It is erected out of a single stone. The erection of megalithic started still during the Aksumite time, but continue until the medieval time, 15th, 16th, and up even recently. And those there are prehistoric and historic times of megalithic sites. In Ethiopia, the character of megalithics consists of 3 types: the stele, Tumiles, and Dolmen. The stele type is ubiquitous in especially south and south, where they are phallic in shape. Especially recently, they are as a tentative list registered by the UNESCO World Heritage Committee. Following the Zagwe dynasty in Ethiopia, the Gondarian period started. When the Gondarian period started, it is known for Gondar is a place in northern Ethiopia, again, the late medieval period. It was a great religious center and flourished immensely in the arts and castle buildings, especially castle buildings. The rulers of Gondar were they were building castles, like about 14 castles were built in the Gondar castle compounds. Each of them belonged to the ruler of the kings. And then they continued also constructing churches, and art and building construction was flourished during this time period. And the architectural style of the Gondaran castle came from the earliest Aksumite and from the Rock-hewn Church of Lalibela. They have features from them. This is one of the castles, and it is often called the Camelot of Africa. Even in Ethiopia, there are also evidence of ruins of legendary ancient Islamic kingdoms. There are evidence of large Aravan settlement, as well as mosques dated to the medieval period, and even the recent times. This is not archaeology, actually. During the modern times, Ethiopia has never been colonized. There are archaeological evidences, of course, but I just wanted to inform you that Emperor Milik of Ethiopia defeated the Italian colonizers that in the Battle of Adwa in 1896. It was a black victory against any colonial, which makes Ethiopia as a symbol of a freedom for many African countries. Generally, in Ethiopia, despite the plethora of paleoanthropological and archaeological potentials, very little attention has been given for archaeological research and heritage management. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you so much, Seminew, for your presentation. It was jam-packed with information, and I'm just blown away with everything. It makes you love the continent that we're on. Like, there's so much to look at. There's so much history, and archaeological record is strong. So props to you for doing this for us. I'd like to open the floor for questions. Would any of you like to go first? Kalita, Mariette?
I will go first. Thank you so much for a wonderful presentation. It was a very detailed presentation, and I think it also just really did justice to how incredible the archaeological record of Ethiopia is, and just the East African record as well. My question has to do with research opportunities in I'd say in any part of the archaeological record associated with the area. Are there a lot of research opportunities for African students to get involved with? Okay. Bye. I'm gonna have to edit that out.
I wonder why he just disappeared.
I know he's back.
What happened?
I don't know. You just left.
You vanished.
Really?
We were really shocked. Yeah. It's okay, we'll edit it out.
Sorry.
It's okay. It's probably just signal. I just wanted to, so now that just tells me I need to make my question simpler and like quick.
Okay.
Are there a lot of opportunities for archaeologists, particularly students from Africa, to study in the region, or is it a lot of international collaborations that really sustain the studies and research?
So I work in the National Museum, and I often collaborate with international scholars, and I have had the opportunity to see the researches that are going on in the country. And mostly the researches are being carried by foreign international scholars coming from mostly America and Europe. And even though there are lots and lots of sites that are poorly investigated recently, the opportunities are mostly through those principal investigators and the scholars. So I would say there are the ways that are coming to Ethiopia are via those researchers. Or if you want to apply for example, to do any research, you have anybody can do research in Ethiopia, but especially for Africans and for Ethiopians, it is archaeology is still struggling to convince the public.
Okay, wow. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right. Thank you. Mariette, do you have a question?
Seminew, from my side, because Ethiopia has such a rich archaeological record, there must be quite a lot of communities who live very intimately, alongside these archaeological sites. And do you find that the research that archaeologists conduct, does it have any impact on the communities? How do people engage with you as archaeologists? Are the relationships positive? Do you get kind of people who are interested in it? Do you find any resistance? What is the atmosphere like, can I say, in Ethiopia in that regard?
In Ethiopia, Ethiopia is a generally conservative country and religious country. Like I said in my presentation, most of the historical archaeologists are associated in one or another way, associated with religious legacies and religious traces like Christian heritage or something related to Islamic sultanates. In that case, people would love to know more about their past, and I would say some people are a little challenged to the prehistory, the human origin, compared to the historic time, time period. But then again, Lucy is our icon. Like in Ethiopia, be it a believer, be it a priest or a sheikh, they all love to hear about Lucy and Lucy or Arti. So I would say it has impact, but we have a lot in the future to do more impacts in the society. When it comes to impacts of archaeological research, compared to the potentials that the country has, the country is not still benefited out of it. There is infrastructural problems in developing archaeological and paleoanthropological sites, museums, and stuff related to, for example, I have faced in the countryside in Afar Depression that many people are many people supposed to be benefited from the huge potentials of the like, for example, if there was origin museums in Afar Depression, would have been a different situation.
Thank you for your response.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you. So I just wanna ask like 2 questions, if that's okay. My first question would be, are there any sites that would be classified as endangered in Ethiopia? Like, are they deteriorating fast? Is it through natural forces, or people destroying the sites themselves?
Okay, one of the sites in my presentation was the Levallois Rock Art churches. Unlike other sites, this site is really famous, and there are many tourists coming. And it is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And this is also, it is not described in an endangered list, but it is actually the natural factors are deteriorating, and there are lots of cracks on the churches, and over tourism endangered this site. And there is recently the government is trying to do a scientific conservation study, the impacts and the aspects to preserve for future generation. But there are, of course, most sites, even though they are not endangered, the lack of conservation is one of the hurdles in Ethiopian archaeological resources.
Okay, cool. Because my next question was going to touch on the conservation, like if there are any conservation efforts being put into practice for those sites that are classified as endangered, or even for sites that are not classified as endangered, just to make sure that archaeology is preserved and available to tourists and researchers and also the general public.
We, like, as an expert working in the National Museum of Ethiopia, I have also a duty. One of my job description is doing public outreach and creating awareness to the public, to the users and the generation in order to preserve, protect, and better management. As a federal institute, we are trying to do for our best, but generally there is a conservation, really a conservation problems in the country. We do not have programs. We do not have master and PhD programs. So people often think conservation as fencing, conservation as, for example, rules and regulation or proclamation, but conservation is science. It is far beyond that. We need to understand the material as an archaeomaterialist. I do believe that we need to understand the scientific archaeometric perspective of each material, be it stone, be it ceramics or building, or we have to, I do believe that it should be studied properly and scientifically prior to any conservation activities. So with regard to that, there is still limitations, but there are still recently efforts that are being made. For example, there is a new university dedicated for archaeological science and conservation in Lalibela. So hopefully in the future, there will be young scholars emerging for heritage conservation and heritage management.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much for answering our questions. Just to do a last check, do you have any other more questions, Kalita and Mariette?
No, I don't, but I do want to say thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. And it's always nice to not only hear about archaeology from different regions, but be presented with a full history of those regions. And yeah, it was just very beautiful. And yeah, I wish you the best for this year and good luck in all research. And maybe we'll all collaborate one day.
Yes, for sure. Thank you so much for having me, and nice to meet you, Mpumpi. And hopefully I met on social media or through email with Kalita.
Yes, I remembered your name, and I was like, I know this person. And then I went and searched on Facebook, and we have spoken a few times. So it's nice to speak to you in person.
Yeah. Thank you once again. And then to the students tuning in, remember to complete the quiz that's associated with this lecture. Remember, we want to see your activity. And to everyone else, have a fantastic day.